I hear a lot of scary shopping stories, and they are usually from the perspective of the person who's shopping. However, my scariest experience happened when I was working at a bookstore. About 2 months after I was promoted from bookseller to assistant manager, we were hit by the Christmas rush. It was always so overwhelming. By the end of the night, everyone was so wiped out. And getting all the receipts and drawers counted at the end of the night took so much time. On the nights that I was closing, I let the workers go as soon as they were done. There was no reason to make them stick around and be tired while I was finishing up my work. After I let everyone go, I went back in the office to do my work. After a while, I heard the doorbell ring. We had security cameras, but there wasn't one at the door. So I had to go to the front door and see who it was. There was a guy there, and he was dressed in dark clothes and had his hood up. I asked him how I could help him, of course watching him through the door. The man said something along the lines of, "Hey dude, I left my wallet in your store. Can you open the door and let me come in and get it?" I asked him where he thought he left it, and that I would look for it for him. He didn't like that idea and told me he wasn't sure. He said he had been shopping through the entire store and would have to look for it. I asked him if he had bought anything while in the store, and he told me yes, which meant he had to have his wallet on him at that point. I pointed that out to him, and he seemed taken back a bit. I told him we didn't get anything turned in, but I could take his information and get back to him if we find anything. The man began getting angry, telling me that he needed his wallet tonight, and he couldn't wait for me to look for it. He kept insisting that I let him in so he could look for it. When I told him that there was no way I was letting him in the store this late, and while I was alone, he began getting visibly angry. He told me that if I didn't let him into the store right away, he would call the police and tell them that I stole his wallet. He even got his cell phone out of his pocket and acted like he was going to call. At that point I had enough. I told the guy the best I could do for him is take his information and call him if anything was found. I then told him that if this wasn't good enough, then there wasn't anything at all that I could do for him. He got really angry and began swearing at me. He grabbed the door and began shaking it, demanding that I open the door. I told him I was going to walk over to the customer service desk and call the police. I wasn't willing to cooperate anymore. As I made my way over there, I noticed the guy take off down the street. I thought that was the end of him. I also figured that I didn't really need to bother the police for this. I went back to my work and tried my best to get it done, so I could go home and get some rest. It honestly took me about 2 hours to finish all of my work. I hadn't heard the doorbell ring and pretty much figured that I wouldn't be seeing that guy again. When I was going to the front of the store, I did look around to see if anyone was in the parking lot before I went outside, but I didn't see anyone. So I went out to my car in the freezing winter and couldn't wait to get out of the cold. However, I froze when I was maybe within a couple feet away from my car. There was someone in the back seat of my car. He was hiding, down on the back seat with his hood over his head, but I knew with 100% certainty that there was definitely someone in the back seat of my car, and I knew exactly who it had to be. Furthermore, he must have seen me or he wouldn't have ducked down as he did. I did the only thing I could think of to do. I turned and ran at full speed back to the store. I didn't look back around until I had made it to the door. And yeah, he was coming at me. I unlocked the door and shut it behind me. He made it to the door right before I could lock it, so I had to do my best to hold it closed while trying to turn the lock. As I did, the man screamed all sorts of obscenities at me, telling me he was going to kill me. As the door opened outward, I quickly pushed it toward him, knocking him on the ground. Before he could realize what had happened and recover, I was able to get the door closed and locked. I immediately called the police. The guy left after the door was locked, but the police picked him up pretty quickly. I don't really know what happened to him after that. I believe he got done with some other crimes, like attempted murder and battery. However, I'm not sure. This story took place a couple years ago, maybe around 2017, and it still haunts me to this day. It was Christmas night, and my family were driving home from this fancy restaurant. Unlike my family, who were all tired, I still felt wide awake, so the 45-minute drive seemed perpetual. On top of that, my little sister was constantly moaning about how her friend didn't get her anything for Christmas. After about 20 minutes of driving, my dad stopped at a gas station to get some cigarettes. My sister, brother, and mother all got out to use the bathroom. I stayed in the car as I had already gone before we left. Once they all left, I decided to play a few games on my phone. I looked at the car clock and saw that 10 minutes had passed, so I immediately wondered what was taking them so long. As soon as I peered out the car window, I saw a man staring at our car. The man startled me as I didn't know how long he had been watching. What made it even more unnerving is that he had a plain blank face, no expression was shown. It was hard to make out any features as it was pretty dark, and he wasn't standing in an illuminated part of the station. He was about 5'9" and looked to be middle-aged. Once he saw me notice him, he started walking towards the car, and I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared. Luckily, my dad came back with the rest of the family just as the man took a couple steps. My dad apologized and told me he had been in an argument with the cashier. I didn't care, I was just glad that my dad was with me. I took another glance at the man outside, and he was still staring, but this time he had an annoyed look on his face. We drove off, and for the rest of the car ride, I couldn't stop thinking about that man. This wouldn't have been too bad if it had ended there, but it didn't. Later that night, I was watching YouTube while everyone else slept, and luckily for me, a storm was raging over us. I enjoy storms, it makes me cozy as I'm laying in bed. I put my phone down and just enjoyed the mood. That didn't last for long as I heard something smash into the window behind me. I lurched forward and nearly fell out of the bed. I thought a bird had just smashed into the window. I parted the blinds, and what I saw next haunted me. I saw a man standing outside by my parents' cars, looking up at my room. I took a closer look and I nearly had a heart attack. It was the same man that I saw at the gas station, only this time, when our eyes met, he grinned. Being the 14-year-old I was, I did the manly thing and screamed at the top of my lungs. My dad came running down the stairs and entered my room. "Why the hell are you screaming?" my dad said. I told him about the man, and I explained everything that had happened. My dad grabbed a baseball bat and told me to call the police. After 10 minutes, the police turned up outside our house and found the man in our shed. He got arrested, and that was the last time I saw him. The next day, my dad inspected the house and we found the handle of our back door had been damaged, but not completely broken. This gives me an eerie feeling, because if he actually managed to get into our house, he could have harmed us or possibly killed us. When I was younger, I really wanted a PlayStation 4 when it was originally released. I tried everything to get one as quickly as possible. The local Best Buy was having a Black Friday sale and I stood in line, waiting to get one. I was nowhere near being lucky enough to actually get one trying this method. I then tried getting one online. As much as I wanted one, the people on eBay and Amazon who were reselling them were asking for way too much money, and I couldn't afford them. After several days of trying my best to find a way to get one, I had to come to the conclusion that it wasn't going to happen. It was then that I thought I came across a bit of luck. Going through Craigslist, I found that someone was selling their PlayStation 4 and at no more than the original buying price of the system. I was of course skeptical. I couldn't understand why anyone would do that. However, I didn't think too much of it. I felt the excitement of getting my hands on the new PlayStation 4 outweighed the skepticism of the situation. I immediately emailed the seller and let them know that I was very interested and hoped that they still had it. I was surprised to get an immediate response. They did in fact still have the PlayStation 4 and would be willing to sell it to me. They asked for my address so they could bring it over. I was sort of hesitant and asked if it would be better to meet in public. I wasn't too keen on the idea of someone coming over to my house. He let me know that he was going to be very busy all day and that he couldn't keep an appointment in public. It would be much better if he came over to my house. I was still not really ecstatic about the idea, but I really wanted that PlayStation 4. I eventually agreed, and gave the guy my address. I figured it was safer than me going over to his place. This whole exchange took place about 9 a.m. I was so happy and really eager to get my PlayStation 4. My eagerness only grew as I began waiting for the guy to show up. But I not only began waiting for him, I waited for him for a long time. Hours passed by and I began to think that he wasn't going to come. Around 2 p.m., I had gotten really impatient. I tried emailing the guy back, asking him where he was. Previously, I had gotten very quick responses from him, but I didn't get any this time. Around 6 p.m., I had lost all hope. I figured that most likely he got a better offer from someone else and didn't want to tell me. I was disappointed, more than I can possibly tell you. I couldn't even tell you how deflated I was. It's one thing to not have gotten the item from the store, I could come to terms with that. But I was so close to having one in my hands and I didn't get the PlayStation 4. For the rest of the night, I kept looking around on Craigslist to find a new PlayStation 4 that was within my price range. I wasn't able to find anything, and before I knew it, I had wasted the entire day and the entire evening with this search. It was past midnight, and I just had nothing to show for the day. I got ready for bed, and that was when I heard something. At first I dismissed it, thinking that it was my imagination. Then I heard it again, and someone was knocking at my door. I walked up to the door and looked out the window. There was a guy standing there and I asked who he was. He identified himself as the guy who had the PlayStation 4. He apologized for being so late and told me he got caught up during the day. He asked if I had the money. I opened the door but kept the screen door closed. I told him I had the money, but I didn't see that he had anything with him. I asked if he brought the PlayStation 4 with him. He told me it was out in his van. He told me to get the money and come out to the van with him, and he would get it for me. I let him know I wasn't really comfortable walking out to his van, and he told me it was alright, nothing I should worry about. Like some random guy pulling up to my house after midnight, trying to sell his PlayStation isn't suspicious enough. I looked over his shoulder and saw that someone was in the van, waiting. This guy had also been keeping his hand in his hooded sweatshirt all the time while talking to me. There was something more than just his hand in there. I told him that I would go get my wallet and then come back. He protested as I closed the door in his face and locked it. I was too uncomfortable with this and I went over to my phone to call the cops. As I did, I heard a loud hit on my front door. Then, after a few moments, I watched the van drive away really fast. When I went to check and see if he damaged my door, I nearly fainted as I saw a knife embedded into the door itself. I was right that he had something in his sweatshirt. He had a knife which he would have potentially used on me. I still thank myself to this day that I didn't go out to his van like he wanted.